Please introduce yourself to the two juries.
Yes, hi, good afternoon. My name is Jeneline Adana. The first name is spelled Jeannenelyn, and the last name is spelled Adona.
And what do you do for a living?
I am a senior crime laboratory analyst at the Florida Department of Law, Enforcement, or FDLE.
You had to pause there for fun. How long have you been working there?
It'll be 21 years next month.
Okay. And explain to the jury your educational background, training experience that allows you to come into courts and testify.
Yes, I hold a Bachelor's of Science degree in cell biology and a Master's of Science degree in genetics. And I have successfully undergone a training program at FDLE, which I finished in January of 2010, and I've been conducted independent DNA testing since January of 2010.
And during that period of time, have you undergone training through the Florida Department of Law Enforcement that allows you to come and give your opinion in courts?
Yes.
And approximately how many times have you testified?
I lost count, but I think it's about 87 times.
Okay. And what fields are you testifying in?
I testify in the fields of forensic serology, forensic DNA analysis with expertise on population statistics.
And what is serology?
Serology is the identification of body fluids like blood, semen, and saliva.
And what is DNA testing? Explain that, how it's forensically used.
So DNA stands for deoxyribonucleic acid. It is the genetic material that is passed on from parents to offspring. Half of the DNA comes from the father and half of the DNA comes from the mother. No two individuals would have the same DNA with the exception of identical twins. It is useful in forensic DNA analysis because DNA profiles can be developed from question samples, and these DNA profiles can then be compared to DNA profiles from known individuals.
Is this type of DNA testing well accepted in the scientific community?
Yes, it is.
And have you ever not been allowed to give your opinion on your DNA testing in courts like this?
Never.
Your Honor, I would tender the witness as an expert in DNA testing and its statistical population components.
Any additional voir dire from attorney for Mr. Whitaker? And for Mr. Robinson?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, you may proceed, Mr. Mizrahi.
Thank you, Your Honor. So the jury heard about DNA. We think of DNA as something that defines our biological traits like height, weight, hair color, skin color, eye color. Are those the types of areas of the DNA that you're looking at?
No, the DNA areas that I'm looking at doesn't code for any trait that are visible.
And I think sometimes it's commonly referred to as junk parts of the DNA.
Yes.
Is that because we don't really know exactly what it does?
It doesn't code for anything, so they're, yes, called junk DNA.
But the science is not junk.
It's not.
And it's in the course of your training experience, other than identical twins, do any two people have the same DNA profile?
No.
And the areas of the DNA molecule that we're looking at, are they different among different people?
Yes. So most of our DNA are the same because it codes for like our two eyes, nose, ears, and all the other bodily functions. But the areas that I am looking at, they are different among individuals. And that's why we are looking at the small segment of the DNA that are different among individuals.
And during the course of your training experience, do you continue with education that allows you to continue to be up to date on the latest expertise?
Yes, we routinely conduct journal clubs at work, and I also attend DNA conferences once a year.
And does the lab go through the FDLE lab that you work at? Does it go through proficiency and testing to make sure it's accredited, things like that?
Yes.
So, during the course of your testimony today, did you ensure that all the safety protocols of your lab were followed and adhered to?
Yes, I did.
So have you had the opportunity to review your 2020 530 file?
Yes.
And if you ever need to refer to it, just let us know. That's perfectly okay, all right? Did you receive a lot of information and evidence related to a Barbara and David Buckley?
I did.
Now, obviously, you're not at the scene collecting all this evidence, so you're relying upon law enforcement to provide you the information on the packages.
Correct.
And then you put in your report what the law enforcement officers have done.
Yes,
You can't testify as to how they did it or anything like that.
correct.
How are you able to testify to this jury that once FDLE gets the item, that item is forensically secure? In other words, you put it into a vault to make sure the seals are done and all that. Explain that to the jury.
So FDLE has an evidence intake section where the items of evidence that are submitted by contributors, the police departments and sheriff's offices are submitted to FDLE. So every case gets assigned a unique FDLE case number, and every item associated with that case gets a unique FDLE item number. Once these pieces of evidence are entered into the system, they are placed in a secure vault that only few members of FDLE personnel are allowed to have access to. And until I request the transfer of custody of those items to myself from the crime laboratory technicians, they remain secure in the vault.
And the jury is kind of, I think, from a distance, seeing things like evidence tape and signatures and things like that. Why is that important?
It is important so that I would be able to know if my seal has been broken into or tampered with after I'm done with my analysis.
Was there any indication in any of your work that the items had been tampered with?
Not with the previous cases that I've testified to where evidence were shown to me.
So I want to go and explain a little bit about what you did there. Lucky for us, the two main items I want you to look at are sitting right to your left. Do you see both a pajama bottom and a pajama shirt?
I see a pajama bottom and, yes, a pajama shirt.
The pajama shirt is 244 and the bottoms are 245. So we're just going to refer to them as bottoms and tops.
Okay.
And you previously looked at those items and identified them as the items that you worked in this case.
Yes.
And I think you could probably see we might as well do it. You can see the bags that are in here that have your identifiable information.
Yes.
So when you're examining items like this, explain to the jury how you go about examining the pajama bottoms and tops to see if there's any DNA that you can test.
So for these particular pieces of evidence, they were described to me as pieces of evidence suspected to contain possible blood stain. So I look for stains that are consistent with originating from possible blood stains, which may present themselves as red-brown staining, brown staining, black staining, green staining, or yellow staining.
And why do you specifically look for blood stains or any kind of stains for doing your DNA testing?
So for this particular case, it was,
Let me ask it like this. Would blood contain DNA?
yes,
Okay.
it will.
So as opposed to going over the whole shirt or the whole bottom searching for potential touch DNA, you go directly to the blood. That's going to give you the best chance.
Yes, and also it was on the case tracking form that possible blood was located on the victim's clothing.
And did you do a test to see if there was any presumptive blood on those items?
I did.
And what was the results of that? If you need to refer
So-
to your, go ahead. I'm
The
sorry.
pajama top and pajama bottoms both gave chemical indications for the presence of blood.
So when that happens, does that target where you're going to do your DNA testing?
Yes, so the same area that gave chemical indications for the presence of blood would be the same areas I will take samples to proceed to DNA testing.
And did you do that?
I did.
Now, before we get into the results of those, it's important the jury understands the concept of an intimate sample, and what does that mean for your testing? How do you take that into account?
So the items of evidence such as clothing are actually referred to as indigenous samples.
Indigenous, that's better, okay.
and which means that the person wearing the items of evidence, we can expect their DNA to be present and would not be unusual. And I can use that person's DNA sample present on the item to back out their DNA to be able to determine if there's any DNA foreign to that person or any DNA not belonging to that person wearing the pajama top or pajama bottoms.
Did you actually receive a known buckle? I say buckle. Is it buccal or buckle?
I say buccal, but I think most people nowadays say buckle.
Oh, okay. I'm not going to say that. So that's going to be States Exhibit 219, which is going to be your number 2. Is that going to be Ms. Buckley's known buckle swab?
Yes,
Did you use that to parse out her indigenous DNA from her pajamas?
I did.
So in parsing out Ms. Buckley's, did you also have her husband, or purported to be her husband, David Buckley's buckle swab?
Yes,
And was he excluded as a possible contributor?
he was.
Did you find DNA that was male that was foreign to Ms. Buckley?
I did.
And did you find it on both items?
I did.
So was it a mixture of Miss Buckley and then this unknown person?
Correct.
Just the two of them?
Yes.
Did you also receive Mr. Barner's buccal swab as well as Mr. Whitaker's buccal swab?
I did.
I'll just show you those for the record. The States Exhibit 222 is going to be Mr. Barner's swab, Dominic Barner, and then States 224 is going to be Mr. Whitaker's.
Yes.
So when you're getting these known profiles from Mr. Barner and Mr. Whitaker, do you develop a full DNA profile for them?
I did.
Did you compare the full DNA profiles from Mr. Barner and Mr. Whitaker to the unknown male DNA you took from the blood stains on the shirts and the bottoms?
I did.
And let the jury know what the results of that was.
So for the DNA profile from Dominic Barner, his DNA profile was compared to the shirt from Barbara Buckley, and Dominic Barner is included as a possible contributor to the mixed DNA profile obtained from the shirt from Barbara Buckley.
And the shirt would have been number 244 for the record. So included as a possible contributor, what does that mean? Does that mean it could be him, may not? Explain to the jury how statistically significant that is.
Yes, so because I wasn't there and I didn't create the mixture, I can't say it's definitively these people who are in the mixture. So I say possible, but the DNA types are consistent with what I observed between the DNA type from Dominic Barner and the DNA types on the pajama from the top from Barbara Buckley. And then I calculated a likelihood ratio. So the observed mixed DNA profile from the top, from the pajama top, is greater than 700 billion times more likely to occur if the sample originates from Barbara Buckley and Dominic Barner than if it originates from Barbara Buckley and an unrelated individual.
Okay, it says 700 billion is a huge number.
It is.
Is that a conservative estimate?
Yes. The actual number is actually so much greater than that, but we cap our reporting segment at 700 billion because it's something that we are more familiar with. It's a number we're more familiar with.
And even that number is more than any human beings have ever lived on planet Earth.
That I'm not sure, but it's definitely more than the people on the planet now.
Yeah, well, that's fair enough. And the people on the planet now, are we up to 9 billion yet? 10 billion? Are we that high?
I think we just exceeded 8 billion or approaching 8.5 billion.
So this is 700 billion times.
Yes,
more.
it's greater than 700 billion.
Greater than 700 billion. So that was with Mr. Barner on the shirt.
Yes, and Dominic Barner is excluded as a contributor to the mixed DNA profile from the bottoms.
Okay, and then likewise, Mr. Whitaker is excluded from the top.
Yes, he is. He is excluded from the top.
We have Barner on the top, and then we have Whitaker on the bottom, which I guess you haven't got to yet. Explain to the jury what the results of the bottoms were.
So a complete DNA profile was obtained from Leroy Whitaker Jr., and that DNA profile was compared to the mixed DNA profiles from the top and bottom. So Leroy Whitaker is excluded as a contributor to the mixed DNA profile from the pajama top. Leroy Whitaker Jr. is included as a possible contributor to the mixed DNA profile obtained from the pajama bottoms. And the observed mixed DNA profile is greater than 700 billion times more likely to occur if the sample originated from Barbara Buckley and Leroy Whitaker Jr. than if it originated from Barbara Buckley and an unrelated individual.
And I want to just briefly explain to the jury how you just practically are taking Barbara Buckley out, and then what's the DNA profile left behind? How do you do that?
So, as I mentioned earlier, half of the DNA comes from the father and half of the DNA comes from the mother. And so we have the DNA profile is actually just a pair of numbers at the 21 areas of the DNA that I'm looking at. So individuals will have different DNA types. Only identical twins would have the same DNA. So anything that does not belong to Barbara Buckley is said to be foreign to her.
And in your analysis, were you confident that there was only one other source of DNA, meaning only two total contributors?
Yes.
And we should probably show the jury where we're talking about. Did you make marks on the bottoms that indicate where you would have gotten the sample from? How would you do this?
Okay, so on my notes, I said area A is red-brown staining on the back.
Did you do a parentheses and put the letter A there?
Yes.
There's another on the side that's facing me where it says neg.
That is short for negative.
So if the jury, if they need to see it, it's the little parentheses that says
A.
A. It looks like there's a little hole there.
Yes, that's where I collected the sample from for DNA testing.
I also want to show you one other item that you looked at, which is States Exhibit 220220. Do you recognize that?
I do.
What's that?
The neck and left wrist swab of Barbara Buckley.
Again, you would expect to find Barbara Buckley on the swab taken from her neck.
And wrist, yes.
And what were the results of that once you accounted for Ms. Buckley's DNA being present?
So the neck and left wrist swab also gave chemical indications for the presence of blood. And the DNA results obtained demonstrated the presence of a mixture consistent with two donors, including at least one male contributor. And Barbara Buckley is expected to be a donor to this item, and she is observed in the mixture. David Buckley is excluded as a contributor to the mixed DNA profile.
And was Mr. Barner found to be the other contributor? With the
Dominic Warner is included as a possible contributor to the swab from the neck and left wrist of Barbara Buckley.
And was the statistic the same?
Yes, the observed mixed DNA profile is greater than 700 billion times more likely to occur if the sample originated from Barbara Buckley and Dominic Barner than if it originated from Barbara Buckley and an unrelated individual.
Other than Leroy Whitaker and Dominic Barner, and obviously Mrs. Buckley, Barbara Buckley, did you reveal any other DNA profiles?
I did not obtain any other standards, so I didn't make any other comparisons.
I guess that was not a great question. Was there anything in those samples where you matched it to Whitaker and Barner, like a third person, I guess is the better question.
No.
Is it common in the Florida Department of Law Enforcement for you to develop a full profile of Leroy Whitaker and then, or any defendant or suspect, and then have another analyst use that full profile for comparison purposes on additional testing?
Yes.
And you're aware that that happened in this case? With,
I'm aware that this is cross-referenced to a different case, to another case, but I don't know if this DNA profile was used for that case.
and you see Ms. Heisler outside?
Yes,
She doesn't live here anymore?
she doesn't.
Was it nice to see her?
Yes.
Okay. And she'll testify about that. But is that common in FDLE for
Yes.
one analyst to do the standard and then another analyst to use that standard?
Yes, I have done that in many other cases.
And the standard that you did for Leroy Whitaker, that's just part of your case file and it gets documented.
Yes,
So someone else can come back and use it.
yes.
That's all the questions I have.
All right, thank you. Cross for Mr. Whitaker.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
How are you doing?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Good. In your 21 years at FDLE, those have all been in serology and DNA.
Yes,
Is it fair to say, over the 21 years, that there have been a lot of changes in the technology?
yes,
And obviously, changes in your protocols as well,
yes,
correct?
correct.
I mean, 20 years ago, did you have the level of safety protocols that are now in place?
I think so. Nothing much has changed with our standard operating procedures, with the exception of the instrument platforms and the amplification kits. But technology is pretty much the same.
Okay. And you mentioned as part of your training, obviously you have your education before you even began at the FDLE, but part of your training at FDLE is to actually learn how to testify effectively,
Correct.
correct?
Yes.
Like you literally have mock moot courts. Correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Now, you had mentioned something that, to your knowledge, no two people have the same DNA, correct? Besides
Yes.
identical twins.
Correct.
Okay. And that's based on what we know right now, correct?
Yes.
And another way to say that is, and we'll get there, and I apologize for somewhat jumping around, but when we start talking about the statistical significance of a certain result, that's based on a specific database, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and in that database is sample DNA profiles of then where you're able to statistically determine what level of the population might have that particular loci.
This is a likelihood ratio, so I think that's different from random match probability.
I should let you explain it because I guarantee you'll do a better job than me trying to ask the question.
Okay.
What is the database? How was the database created?
So the database is created by collecting samples from blood banks, from, I think for this particular database, it was from Memphis, Tennessee,
Okay.
and Fort Lauderdale, and then there were buccal swabs from Paternity Lab in Ohio. And so these samples were then extracted and DNA profiles were developed and tabulated, and then the number of times a particular DNA type is observed in the population, they are tabulated. And we are using this database, which is used nationwide and used by the FBI as well. And this is published in a peer-reviewed journal, Forensic Science International Genetics, and it can be refuted by other people, other scientists out there, but this has been validated to be valid for our purposes.
For the statistical
For
analysis.
this statistical analysis, yes.
And so, if I understood you correctly, number one, how many people are in the database?
I believe it's about 1,097 individuals in the database, including Asian individuals, which, you know, we're not calculating the likelihood ratio of.
Okay. And a real-world application, is it somewhat the concept? Is it somewhat similar to like when we hear about polling results? And then people are trying to say, because we had a poll result, we can then assume we took a small database, we can now then expand upon what we think will happen for a larger population.
Yes,
Okay, so very similar to like when we'll read in the paper before some type of an election, the polling numbers are suggesting, correct?
yes, but I think it's different in the fact that Caucasian population, the genetic differences between individuals are greater than between populations.
Sure, okay. And so your calculations are, and they're scientific, they've been scientifically validated.
Yes,
But just for kind of the education of our jurors, we're creating these numbers, or we're finding these numbers based on the, I guess, known profiles of, was it 1,197 people?
1,097.
1,097. Okay. Okay. And I think it goes without saying, but I'll go ahead and say it, that obviously those 1,097 samples that make up this database, we know for sure that there were not two DNA profiles that exactly matched, correct?
Correct.
And through all of your 21 years, you have not come across a situation where two different people that were not identical twins had the same DNA profile, correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right. So you had mentioned in regards to kind of the different protocols that are in effect at FDLE that you all actually have your own vault, correct?
We have a central vault in the evidence intake section, and we have our own lockers in the biology DNA section.
Okay. You obviously do not know where a particular piece of evidence or standard was prior to getting to the Florida Department of Law Enforcement.
Correct.
There is a difference between what we call touch DNA, and then I'm going to use the word intimate sample. Would that be correct?
No,
Okay.
not for.
Correct me. Correct
Yes.
me. Tune me
So
up.
intimate samples are samples that were collected from an individual's body, like orifices and, skin swab. And indigenous samples are samples like bedding or clothing or purses or cell phones.
Okay.
But both intimate and indigenous samples, we expect that individual's DNA to be present there. Or we don't necessarily expect, but if we see them there, it's not unusual because they have contact with those pieces of evidence.
Okay. And forgive me, because the distinction I'm actually trying to make by a very poorly worded question is the difference between touch DNA, where you might ultimately be seeking epithelial, versus blood. Okay? And is there a difference?
Yes.
Okay.
Blood is a much richer source of DNA.
Okay. In regards to touch DNA, give us some examples of what touch DNA would be.
So touch DNA would be if, say, for example, my hands are sweaty and then I touch this surface, there is a possibility that I can leave my DNA behind or my skin cells behind on this surface, and then if it's swabbed at a later time, then my DNA can be picked up from those skin cells, but it's not a guarantee. There's a lot of factors that come into play with touch DNA, getting left behind on an item or not.
And sometimes you will know that you have DNA, but you don't have any identifiable DNA or interpretable DNA, correct?
Can you repeat the question?
Sure. And let me actually go to the example in this particular case. Just for an example of sometimes you know there's DNA there, but it's just not interpretable. In this particular case, you attempted to get DNA from Miss Buckley's fingernail swabs.
Correct.
Okay. And your ultimate result in regards to that was due to the limited nature of these results the data is not interpretable.
Correct.
Okay. You did find, though, that there was DNA foreign to Ms. Buckley, correct?
Correct.
Just,
It was too little to be compared to anyone's standard.
okay. And you also have that with the instrumentation, that there are times you're ultimately, to get these numbers, you're looking at graphs.
Yes.
You're looking at peaks.
Correct.
And if a peak isn't, there's sometimes what you call, you can't call a certain peak, correct?
Yes.
Help us understand what that phrase means.
So we have a threshold. So a peak has to reach a certain height in order for me to be able to say that that is a DNA peak attributable to a person.
And so there are times that we have what's called a mixture, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And what I've heard you explain is that, or actually let me start with the results in regards to the pajama bottoms.
Yes.
Would you call that a mixture?
It was a mixture.
Okay. And is it fair to say you call it a mixture because you found at least 2 different persons' DNA?
Correct.
Okay. Mr. Mizrahi had asked you a question, were you confident, and we're specifically talking about the pajama bottoms, that it was only the 2, that it was only 2 people?
With the results that I interpreted and I have observed, I am confident it is only 2 and 2 individuals only.
Okay. But again, we unfortunately have in DNA technology situations where you may have peaks that don't meet your threshold, correct?
Yes, but I don't interpret those peaks because they're not interpretable.
Sure. And so they're not interpretable in terms of identifying them to anything, correct?
If they're not even called, I can't interpret them.
Okay, you can't even call it a specific DNA marker.
Correct.
Okay, fair enough. There are a number of steps in regards to the DNA process, are there not?
Yes, there are.
You actually do not complete all of those steps yourself, do you?
I don't.
And in this particular case, there was an Aliyah Field, correct? Am I pronouncing her name correctly?
Aaliyah Fields.
Aliyah, is it Fields?
Fields,
Okay.
yes.
She's no longer with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement?
She's not.
Okay, but she performed some of the manual steps in this process, correct?
Robotic steps.
Okay. She also helped perform the quantitation setup?
Yes.
Okay. And then there was another worker, Roe McKenzie?
Rowena McKenzie, yes.
Okay. And she also operated the robot for amplification?
Yes.
Okay. And you're a supervisor at the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, correct?
I am.
Within your
I am not.
You are not.
I am not.
But you were supervising these people, correct?
I'm not.
Okay. But they do important steps to the DNA
Yes.
process, correct?
They have undergone training and they have completed their training successfully. They do proficiency testing and competency testing before they are able to operate these instruments with casework samples.
In your time at the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, you have experienced instances of what's called sample carryover contamination, correct?
Yes.
Okay. If you could, explain what that is to the jurors.
So sample carryover contamination could occur if there is a sample that has a large amount of DNA that could then bleed over to other samples that are adjacent to it on a plate.
And you personally, ma'am, are not sure of how many times in your career at FDLE you've had instances of contamination?
I don't remember, but it is recorded.
There is documentation as is required for
Yes.
your accreditation. Can I just have one moment, Your Honor?
Yes.
asked, ma'am, in regards to whether or not other analysts, and I think you mentioned that you were aware in this case that there might have been two separate analysts working on different aspects or different parts of the case. What would that analyst use in terms of what you produced for the known profile of Mr. Whitaker?
The DNA profile that was generated in the course of the analysis.
Meaning the double numbers
Yes,
or the actual item?
just the double numbers.
And can I touch the witness room?
Yes.
Showing you the pajama bottoms, which reads 10L for identification, but I think it's been introduced. And I just want to make sure that I understand. Where this is marked A, this is where you took the actual cutting,
Correct. That whole.
that hole. What is the significance of what's on the back?
That is actually the front.
Oh, I'm sorry, the front.
So there is a stain there that I think could be a possible blood stain, and I tested it presumptively for blood, and it was negative. So I marked it.
And that's why you stopped any further analysis?
Correct.
Okay, how about this other where it says maybe NEG?
No, that was the negative.
Oh, I'm sorry, I see another mark then.
Oh. That must have been negative because I only assigned a alphabetical identifier on areas that gave chemical indications for the presence of blood. I must not have labeled that negative.
Okay. Can you look through your bench notes? Because obviously you take very detailed
Right.
notes over exactly what you do.
So I said with red-brown staining on the front pant leg and back pant leg, and positive area A, right, red-brown staining on the back, and negative red-brown staining on the front. And a sample was collected from area A for DNA analysis.
Okay. All right, thank you very much, ma'am. I don't have anything further.
All right, thank you. Cross for Mr. Robinson.
Please, Your Honor. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I didn't have anything for you, but then you were talking about population, so it caused me to put together a few questions. So you were asked about 700 billion times more likely, right?
It's actually greater than 700 billion times.
That's a lot of billions.
Yes,
And we all agree, and I think that it was Mr. Mizrahi said that that's more people than have ever been on the planet.
which I'm not sure of.
Okay. But it's more than are on here right now. I'll agree with that.
Yes,
Now, if instead I were to change it, and this doesn't have to do with your analysis, but your expertise, if I were to change that to 4.4 million times more likely, that's a lot less, right?
yes.
Is that equivalent to the population of Florida?
See, the likelihood ratio statistic that I calculate doesn't have anything to do with the Earth's population. It is independent of it. But the fact of the matter that we are capping the reporting at 700 billion is because it's something that most people can relate to.
Okay, but we're talking about 4.4 million.
I don't know
Let
the,
me finish
okay.
the question. If it's 4.4 million, and I understand that you're going, you're not saying that it's against the population, but the terminology that's used by FDLE, that's used by all analysts across all reports, ties to the population, correct?
It doesn't.
So then what's the relevance of the number? To just give a big number?
No, the likelihood ratio is what the number that is the statistics that is calculated when comparisons are made.
Okay. So you can have, and we can end with this. You can have comparisons when it's in the hundreds of billions, right?
Yes,
If it's on the low end of the millions, that's lower, much lower on the spectrum, right?
yes.
Nothing further, Your Honor. Thank you.
Okay, is there any redirect?
So Ms. Schlacks briefly brought up the concept of not having DNA and the fragility of DNA. Could you explain to the jury, in your training experience, if I touch something, does that mean I'm going to automatically leave behind DNA that we're going to find?
No.
Explain that to the jury.
So, as I've mentioned earlier, there's a lot of factors that come into play as to when touch DNA can be left behind. It depends on the length of time between the contact of the skin surface and the item of evidence. It depends on if there was enough friction to slough off skin cells from the skin surface to the item. It also depends if the person recently washed hands, or if the item was clean prior to it being swabbed or being sampled after it was touched.
What about environmental factors? Heat,
So-
water, stuff like that.
DNA is a very stable molecule. However, it can be degraded by extreme heat. It can be degraded by cleaning products. It can be degraded by water because it can promote microbial growth. And it's also sensitive to pH changes.
Can also be like wiped away.
Yes,
Not, I just want to make sure it's not necessarily cleaning products, but just wiping something away.
yes. Somebody could have touched it, and that person just like picked up the DNA with his skin surface or her skin surface, and DNA was not there anymore.
Ms. Schlacks asked you about the why about there being only two contributors to the DNA? Why are you so confident that it's only two?
Because so like I mentioned earlier, half the DNA comes from the father and half the DNA comes from the mother. It can be the same DNA type at one area of the DNA, or it could be two. The maximum number of DNA types that I expect at one area of the DNA for one person is two. So anytime I see 3 or 4, then it tells me that there's more than one individual there. And the DNA that I observe on the shirt, or the bottom and the top, I am very confident that there are just two people because I've seen a maximum of 4 DNA peaks.
Never saw a fifth, which would indicate a third contributor.
Correct.
And the DNA profile that wasn't Barbara Buckley matched the DNA profile of either Barner or Whitaker.
They align with their DNA profile. They're consistent.
And we're looking at 21 different locations.
Correct.
Explain to the jury, because we excluded Mr. Buckley, if there's any location where that DNA does not match either Mr. Barner or Mr. Whitaker, are you able to definitively exclude them as being a contributor?
Exclusion is absolute. If there's any discrepancy whatsoever in just one area of the DNA, that is on exclusion.
And we were talking about the population of the Earth, but this statistical probability is to show how rare the likelihood of someone, an unknown individual, contributing that DNA versus either Mr. Barner or Mr. Whitaker. Is that a better way to say it?
It sounds correct, but I don't know if it is correct.
Well, it's not, you're not saying that there's a 700 billion people in the Earth and you might find one person that has that.
No. What I'm saying that DNA profile is 700 billion times more likely to occur if it originated from Barbara Buckley and Dominic Barner on the pajama top than if it originated from Barbara Buckley and an unrelated individual who is not Dominic Barner. So the likelihood ratio is a statistical calculation that compares two opposing explanations to the same event. So the event being a mixed DNA profile of two individuals was observed on the pajama top. The first explanation is that DNA profile originated from Barbara Buckley and Dominic Barner. And the second explanation is that DNA profile originated from Barbara Buckley and an unknown individual. The first explanation is greater than 700 billion times more likely than the other explanation. That is what likelihood ratio is about.
And I assume you're not an expert in political polling or anything like that. Is that true?
I'm not.
But in your lay mind, have you ever heard of someone being 700 billion times more likely to win than somebody else? Have you ever heard that kind of polling reported?
No.
That's all the questions I have, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. May this witness be excused? All right, thank you, ma'am. You're excused and free to go.